like as you said, we're all here to learn and recognize the presence of a lot of perhaps experts in cybersecurity, perhaps cybercrime as well, and that should enhance perhaps the presentation this morning. Right, so I believe that it's very fitting to start this presentation with understanding of what is cybercrime and what is cybersecurity. I have no doubt that you persons know what these how these entities are defined. But perhaps to get a better understanding, or to put it in a nutshell, cybersecurity is really about mitigating those cybercrime threats that we may encounter. And as you can see, cybercrime relates really to computers and networks and the internet as the primary source of targeting. And those include hacking and ransomware, identity theft, malware, cyberbullying, online harassment, and attacks on critical infrastructure. I think that this perhaps is important, and that is what has perhaps caught our attention over the last few years or so. Opposing cybersecurity is those technologies and practices and processes that we use to protect systems, networks, and data from unauthorized access, attacks, or damage. Again, listed there are firewalls and antivirus, encryption for your secure and sensitive data, patching and updating software, training and recognition of phishing emails, and monitoring systems for unusual activity and responding to breaches. But more importantly, like I said, cybersecurity is about mitigating the impact of cybercrime. So I'm going to play a video, perhaps which should resonate within you, which should perhaps give a picture as to how our international partners view
cybercrime is big business around the world. By the end of this, the financial impact of cybercrime is expected to surpass $10 trillion, according to the firm Cybersecurity Ventures.
One of the fastest growing economies is cybercrime. You can see where the risk versus reward is incredibly appealing to somebody who wants to steal from other people.
In today's digital world, cybercrime is a growing and at this point inescapable threat. Hackers are becoming more sophisticated and dangerous by the minute, jeopardizing individuals and businesses alike. By 2031, a business will fall victim to a ransomware attack every 2 seconds, according to Cybersecurity Ventures. This is a substantial increase from 11 seconds in 2021. And contrary to popular belief, this cyber pandemic isn't confined to the actions of cybercriminals alone.
90% of the time when you hear about a cyber incident, there's a human involved in some way. So Sally's clicked a link, Bob has opened an attachment, someone found a USB in the bathroom.
But I go back to the MGM Resorts breach, $100 million loss event. And the pivot point in the breach, the point at which the attackers had their runaway success, was an impersonation call into a help desk where they got somebody's credentials given to them. And after that, they were off to the races.
Human error accounts for 68% of data breaches, according to the 2024 Verizon Data Breach Investigations Report, with phishing being the prime culprit.
Untrained employees are significantly more vulnerable to cyber attacks, phishing, scams in general. Consequently, such employees can represent a weakness for the organization.
By 2025, global damage from cybercrime is expected to hit $10.5 trillion annually. According to Cybersecurity Ventures, this staggering statistic is a direct result of today's cyber threat landscape, which, with the introduction of new technologies such as the Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, and machine learning, has only grown more dire.
We are already seeing make phone calls with real-time conversations. These attacks are happening daily, and combining fake emails with SMS and voice to make them more convincing has become much easier and more scalable for attackers.
Everyone has a digital footprint. If you've been breached by a credit reporting agency, if you've been breached by a bank, if you've been breached by retail, your information is on the dark web. So they learn about you. They know your mother's maiden name, they know your favorite color, they know your car. They use all of that information, not just to answer your secret questions, but they know that information. Say, hey, we went to high school together, we went to college together. That's the difference between 5-10 years ago to now.
Cybersecurity Ventures reports that global cybercrime costs are expected to grow by 15% over the next 5 years. But are these overinflated figures, or are cyber attacks really causing that much damage to the world?
I think that you find the connection between the amount of money being made and the connectedness of many firms to the internet. Before, to get ransomware installed somewhere, you really needed to try pretty hard, and often it required either physical access to a building or a network, or somebody on the inside making a mistake and putting a device into a system. I think with more and more connectivity, more and more to the internet, plus collaborative tools and the like, I think it just facilitated that. Technology really is the linchpin for society. So now everything's connected, and I think it's just more opportunity.
With increased opportunities comes heightened risk, which experts are working tirelessly to address. Raising awareness is key. To this end, the National Cybersecurity Alliance hosts Cybersecurity Awareness Month every October.
We do campaigns all year round, but the reason that one is so successful in particular is because it allows everybody to talk about security in their own way, in a way that's relevant to their community, but still be a part of something bigger. And that's why we get people from almost 100 countries, and we get billions of impressions globally every October.
2024 marks the 20th anniversary of this valuable initiative. In that time, it's clear that progress has been made, but experts don't deny that there's still a long way to go for the industry.
We have made some strides in raising awareness, but I don't think we're where we need to be when it comes to cyber literacy. It's a gap for humans, and it's a gap for people in different roles. So sometimes we put all the energy in the people in the tech team, and we forget about HR, we forget about the tax and the finance group. So I think it's really important that you don't leave anybody behind when it comes to cyber education and cyber literacy.
Our new hires probably pose the highest risk. I think part of that has to do with the fact that they're not sure on what, say, a typical branded Northwell message would look like. So they're more inclined to open up emails and perhaps click on things. And so we spend a lot of time and effort upon the initial new employee orientation to educate them about security awareness and training. We tell them right at the beginning that we will be conducting a targeted phishing exercise to test their knowledge of what we explained to them during the training. It's just not my team that's responsible for security at Northwell, it's everybody's responsibility. And we try to instill that core value in our workforce.
The attackers are constantly evolving. The techniques are evolving, but at their basis, they work on basic human psychology, that need for impulse, to click, to do, to move before someone else, or activating that sense of urgency response. And if you breathe, if you take a moment, if you are even the least bit paranoid, you can save yourself a lot of time and yourself and your organization a bunch of money and resources.
The risk of employee compromise is concerningly high at organizations worldwide. It's for this reason that companies must prioritize ongoing security awareness training, ensuring team members are cyber aware both in and out of the office.
Employees are more open to having that cybersecurity training because it impacts their personal lives. But there's also the blurring of our personal and our business lines, our personal and business devices, our personal and business data. And therefore, in some regard, it is a little bit harder because they have to make that distinction. They always have to be cyber aware. As an example, the majority of folks are getting more and more familiar with phishing. Basically, phishing through email. What have cyber attackers now done? You see the prevalence of phishing, basically phishing through SMS. And there's inherently cultivating or taking advantage of human behavior where we have to place inherent higher trust in text versus emails. So it is harder in the sense that it keeps moving, and we can never be complacent when it comes to cybersecurity training and awareness.
Everybody has to use technology. It is a digital native nowadays. So being aware of those digital risks and educating yourselves is really important to be able to identify something that looks suspicious and not right. So I think that's one of the things that we have to keep an eye on. And we have responsibility as everyday citizens just in the environments that we operate in and how we live our lives from a day-to-day perspective.
Cybersecurity Ventures predicts that the overall market for security training products and services will be worth $10 billion annually by 2027. Yet when it comes to training sessions, most employees have come to expect arduous, hours-long workshops that will leave them yawning. To overcome this, organizations must implement one critical factor: engagement.
employees need training that's relevant to them. Ideally, training that reinforces and supports the security policies of the organization, and training that is relevant to each of the unique individuals based on their risk understanding, digital literacy, role, psychographic segment, and so much more.
At MasterCard, we do monthly spear phishing training. In fact, it's probably one of the most aggressive places that I've been, which makes sense in financial payments and technology space. That message comes from the top down. That importance comes from the top down. Because even the presidents of the different business units or business groups have competitions amongst themselves on what the click rate is. That level of engagement increases the awareness.
Cyber threats are continuously evolving, with hackers employing both established and cutting-edge tactics to breach digital defenses and weaken the effectiveness of human safeguards. As a result, many organizations are left wondering the same thing. Is it possible to stay ahead? The answer lies in proactive leadership. By adapting security strategies and setting a strong example, top executives can inspire their teams to follow suit.
One of the things that organizations and leaders can promote is that personal accountability. What am I doing to keep this organization safe? I was out with many leaders recently and I asked them, do you all have multi-factor authentication turned on? And they were like, yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think my assistant turned it on for me. And I said, okay, pull your phones out. And none of them had it on.
Multi-factor authentication, or MFA, is the future of cybersecurity, but we have a long road ahead to fully implement it. Much like the early days of seatbelts in automobiles, MFA is still a relatively new concept that requires education and advocacy.
When I looked at seatbelts, it was really, really interesting because in the early days, people cut them out. First of all, the manufacturers didn't want to put them in the vehicles. Then they started putting them in the vehicles and they wanted to charge for them. And they found that customers didn't want to pay for them. Then they started putting them in the vehicles included in the price. And there were customers actually snipping, cutting the seatbelts out of the vehicles.
Seatbelts now save countless lives every day, with drivers and vehicle occupants required by law to wear them in almost every state across the US. And now, cyber fighters across the globe are facing the same challenge. In simple terms, multi-factor authentication is a security measure that requires users to provide more than one piece of evidence to verify their identity. With 81% of data breaches caused by weak or stolen passwords, it's safe to say that some form of passwordless authentication is absolutely critical.
You might grumble at first when there's an account that forces the use of MFA, but that grumbling is very short-lived. That consumer friction was very, very short-lived. People wrap their head around it pretty quickly. Our research, our OBEHAVE report that we do every year shows that once people have used MFA, they keep using it. Very few people take the time, if they're given the choice by the account or the software, to disable it.
If you're curious about whether mandating MFA is feasible for large organizations, take a look at Salesforce. In 2022, they mandated the use of MFA on all their applications for all customers.
That's a ubiquitous tool that's used by a lot of organizations, large and small. And so for them to take that stance, I think that was a really good move. That was a right thing to do, and I would love to see more companies follow that lead.
Encouraging better password habits is something that needs to happen across the board for all organizations, regardless of their size. It is, however, an uphill battle. So how can we start chipping away at this mountain of tired security practices? The first step is to give people the tools they need for better habits.
I think that cyber resiliency is everybody's accountability. Everybody should have something on their annual assessment saying, here's what I'm doing to make sure that we're more cyber resilient, and here's what I'm doing in my actions to make change. I say if you share the Wi-Fi, you share the network, you share the accountability to keep it safe.
When we look at the statistics, the 80–90% of breaches involving the human element, I believe that's where we have the greatest opportunity to boost our defenses by engaging people in this exercise, increasing the level of awareness as a first step, but fundamentally more important, helping these people understand what the risk is and how important their actions are in securing the organization, the data, and our customers. I do believe that is how we can move the needle in terms of defending against cybercrime.
It may be impossible to completely eliminate human error, but it's vital that companies understand how important it is to try. With the average cost of a data breach reaching an all-time high of $4.45 million in 2023, according to IBM's Cost of a Data Breach report, it's clear that the fight against cybercrime is far from over.
So is the fight far from over? Any comments? Things that you see and you hear and that you understand every day. So again, the human factor. All right, so let's look at what Dr. Curtis Charles had to say in October 2024, with his interview with the Barbados Today. He stressed that the Caribbean remains significantly behind other regions in cybersecurity. That's a fact, very much so. Leaving critical infrastructure vulnerable to a range of threats. He also stressed that critical infrastructure in the Caribbean, such as electricity-grade road systems, telecommunications, water systems, again, unfortunately have not been developed or operated from the ground up, or with security and cybersecurity in mind, which places regional countries in a precarious position. So we know that very well, and we've experienced that over the last perhaps few years. So that's public-private partnerships matter. Do we need to have public-private partnerships? Some of the tongue twister. Do we need to have those? Yes? No? Right. So if we really look at it, we need to have partnerships within the public sector. We need to have partnerships within the private sector as well. So there are different private entities represented here. So the partnership should exist within those private entities, and it should exist within the public entities as well. And then that partnership between private broadly and public broadly should exist. So it matters because the growing importance of collaboration between public and private sector in combating cyber threats is important. No one entity can perhaps take on the cyber fight on its own. And for obvious reasons, and for some of those reasons that we will come across perhaps in the other couple of slides. Rising cyber threats, ransomware, data breaches, critical infrastructure vulnerabilities. So these things are happening in Barbados and in the region almost like clockwork. One time it was something that perhaps we heard about, but perhaps not paid any attention to it because it was not affecting us. It was not affecting company A or company B or service A or service B. But these days, it is affecting almost everybody. Persons are concerned about their information that may be residing elsewhere other than on their computer systems in their homes. So in essence, it is affecting all of us. Shared risk require collective action. So risks and threats were something that we hardly talked about before. Everything as far as cybercrime and cybercrime seem to be a secret. Hush, hush. Company A is affected, company B doesn't know. Company A is affected, the police don't know. So we understand that there's a need to protect perhaps the service, the business, but again, sharing is still pretty much necessary. Collaboration enables resource pooling, knowledge sharing, and unified response. So let's talk about resource pooling. Do we have enough resources in any particular company? Do we have enough resources on island to deal with cybercrime, to deal with data breaches? No. We may argue no. Although we recognize that there are a handful of experts or budding experts in the room, those persons are perhaps loyal to their particular entity or so. You may share in this forum, but when it comes broadly to collaborating and building partnerships, it is not existing. Who wants to share anything with the police? Nobody. So, but the police need definitely to share with persons, because the more we're told, the more information we can get, the better we can work. So perhaps a lot of cybercrime goes unreported, because company A don't want to lose business. Bank A don't want perhaps the clients to go to another bank. Insurance company don't want the person to go to another company. So much of these go unreported. But does it help? Perhaps no. Perhaps no. All right, so this slide talks about the Cybercrime Act 2024, which has not been passed as yet. It is still a bill. And the intention is that this would repeal the Computer Misuse Act once it has been passed. But the act itself, we have no doubt that it will pass, and perhaps in the earlier part of this year. But the bill itself speaks to a number of offenses identified under prohibited conduct. So those offenses talk about illegal access. And some may appear quite minor if you look at it. Modification of program data, interfering with program data, interfering with computer system, illegal interception of data, misuse of devices, access of internet to commit further offense, disclosure of access code, and it goes on, receiving or giving access to computer program or data, computer-related forgery, computer-related fraud, child pornography, child grooming, online child sexual abuse. So again, as far as all minors is concerned, the Act is stepping out to deal with instances of cybercrime against these younger persons. Malicious communication, and that is something that we're pretty much familiar with. Every day there may be malicious communication. Cyberbullying, cyberterrorism. So we're hoping that this Act will pass so that you as cybercrime or cybersecurity practitioners will have indication as to what you're fighting against, what crimes that you're trying to mitigate. But can we do this without challenges? Can we do this without challenges? I would dare say no. So some of the obstacles that perhaps hinder effective security measures include fragmented measures across the organization. So across every organization, within the organization itself, particularly if you're a big organization, you may have different entities adopting different postures, perhaps some being more aware of cybercrime and cybersecurity than others. So again, the approach is fragmented. If we reflect perhaps into last year when we had one of the breaches, we had perhaps the minister calling the meeting, coming together and trying to streamline and make sure that the security practitioners within the organization, those IT persons as well, perhaps take stock and look at the systems, who has access to the systems, et cetera, et cetera. So again, that would lead perhaps to measures that are perhaps unified and that are far-reaching across the organizations and perhaps into the public sector. Lack of real-time threat intelligence sharing. Do we share? No. So we need to start sharing intelligence. We need to start sharing information. But how do we make that happen? You know, it happens because you have a friend that works at company A or company B. We need to establish protocols. We need to establish systems for ensuring that we can share this information. Regulatory and operational silos. We operate in silos a lot on island and everybody doing their own little thing, you know. Be concerned about this person at this table, but not at the next table. So we need to perhaps move away from that and do away with the silos and be able to foster relationships across the two sectors, private and the public. Limited resources for smaller businesses. So is this a problem? Do the smaller businesses suffer in any way? Or the smaller businesses are less vulnerable? The smaller businesses, do you agree with that? I can argue that the smaller business may not have that amount of data to protect.
Smaller businesses is major reason why we actually go into a larger business.
Okay, so the smaller businesses
and advance into that.
Right, so we know that on Ireland there are small companies, there are big companies. Like a power boasts that they have perhaps a robust cybersecurity posture or whatever it is. And you know, they have to protect perhaps the power grid. Within the TBPS, we may not see it that way, although perhaps we run number networks. So primarily, one which sits on the public one, and one which is CCTV driven, and perhaps is not within that domain. Yet still is a network that can be breached, is a network that can perhaps be hacked. But the point is here that resources are limited regardless of how you look at it. Within that small business, within the larger business, within Barbados, within the Caribbean, our resources are somewhat limited. But if we come together, then we can still make that effort to resolve the issues and to mitigate against those threats. So what are some of the key roles and partnerships of cybersecurity? Are they necessary? Are they essential? Public-private partnerships are essential for facilitating real-time threat intelligence sharing. And again, we mentioned that a short while ago, but we need to make that happen. Persons need to get up, and perhaps we can see this as a start of trying to establish partnerships. For me, like I said, I ran a CCTV network, and the police can't do all. Everybody in Barbados got a camera at the house or on the door or somewhere. But are you willing to share that information? Are you willing to give me a string? Are you willing to give the investigator who comes knocking at your door that footage that you may ask for? So perhaps no. So we need to establish and we need to build and we need to understand that we need to facilitate the process of building partnerships. Align regulatory frameworks and compliance requirements. These are the key roles. So again, frameworks, guidelines, protocols, SOPs, all those things matter in building a relationship. Supporting innovation through joint research and funding. Does that work well for us? Do we support innovation, or everybody runs with their own innovative idea? So we need to look at this because sometimes your innovation may turn out to be wastage or does not necessarily suit the purpose that it was intended for. So again, that research, that collaboration can perhaps create innovative ideas that are beneficial and long-lasting. Enhancing incident response coordination. So incident response can be looked at perhaps in multiple ways, but within the cyber realm, then how many persons here are involved in the incident response? Is there incident response team? We know that within some government entities there is. We know that within the Barbados Defense Force there is. We know that within the police service there is a cyber crime unit, but not necessarily a cybersecurity unit as such. So we need to be able to enhance our incident response. We tend to believe, or I tend to believe, that there's a lot of good, there's a lot of wealth, there's a lot of knowledge, not necessarily wealth in terms of money within the private sector. And that is so, or that is not so. Yeah, private sector has some clout, has some money, so they can do stuff. So again, other entities may very well depend on somebody in the private sector to get up and perhaps take the lead and make perhaps cause for these partnerships to happen. Building blocks of successful collaboration. The first one that jumps up there is perhaps the hardest to swallow: trust. Is there a lot of trust happening right now?
No.
Yeah, a lot of trust? No.
Zero trust.
Zero trust. So I don't think that's an issue only for us in Barbados and us for the region. I think trust is an issue right here now. Our US partners can perhaps attest that trust is the issue.
Second,
Yeah.
zero trust now.
Police trust nobody. So
Just verifying.
yeah, so we've had a lot of discussions on premise or cloud. So we're not so trusted of the cloud because we can't see, we can't feel our servers. But my argument is, who's going to do the better job? Barbados Police Service or Amazon or Google or one of those things? So these are things that we need to look at. So trust, we need to work on trust amongst ourselves, among the private sector, among the public sector, and then that public sector partnerships. We have some good partnerships going. I'm an operational person and I see those partnerships every day. So we work a lot with private security. We do a lot of events. So the partnerships is already there. So, but we need to look at it as far as cybersecurity is concerned and understand that cybersecurity or cybercrime rather is just as impacting as a murder. a shooting. So we need to understand that. Shared goals focus on resilience, innovation, and deterrence. We need to have a common purpose, and that's what that is trying to say. Resilience can only come about if you are innovative and if there's unity across the sectors. That is how we will build resilience. If you have resilience, then we can understand that deterrence will take place. And we really need to deter because we can't stop. Because the same technology that is advancing is creating further issues. So the more we do, the more we will have to do, if that makes sense. So we talk about AI and machine learning, but a lot of persons still invite the AI because trust issues, confidence issues, or the understanding that now we will have to perhaps be so advanced that it will have to deal with AI and machine learning and the attacks or breaches that may occur in that particular area. Communication. We need clear channels for real-time collaboration. Sometimes we hardly talk. So we need to understand who communicates when and where and to who. Much of our communication is what we see on WhatsApp, and Instagram, TikTok, and perhaps you name them. But we need communication from the right place. So again, this is a key part of building the partnership, establishing clear channels for communication. Governance, perhaps a biggie here as well. Implementation of policies for accountability and decision-making. We are hoping that a lot of the intelligence efforts, a lot of the perhaps AI efforts will drive our decision-making. But yet still we are concerned that in the AI aspect, that the human factor may be missing, that there may be no discretion. So again, do we want to evolve to instances where we have decisions making with no discretion? The person can argue for and against. But needless to say, we need to implement policies that will govern our public-private partnership. Case studies. So do you still consider ourselves third world or only when it matters? I think sometimes only when it matters. We are painting a first world picture, but we have to jump through loops to get there. Yeah, we want the scene to be up there with the latest technologies. The Prime Minister has a vision in which she is pushing hard to achieve, but our support is necessary. So these entities have the experience, they have an online presence, and you can get to them, you can see how they do their business and what they do. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, that's a US entity on the Homeland Security, and that has responsibility for national responsibility for understanding, managing, and reducing risks in these three areas: cybersecurity, infrastructure, and emergency communications. So again, you can take a peek and see how they're doing business. For me, as an operational person, I always look for entities, whether it is another police force in the US or elsewhere, to benchmark, because they have had the experience in which we can learn from. Again, if you're not US friendly, then you can go to the European Union. So again, they have entities as well. We have the European Union Agency for Cybersecurity, and they offer guidance, tools, resources to safeguard citizens and businesses from cyber attacks. I know that a lot has been said about tools in this particular symposium as well. So I'm sure that tools are being offered or exposed to for our consideration of security. So we need tools to work to make this job perhaps successful. We've gone away from the days of computers. I know everybody has a smartphone or a smartwatch. So we must evolve as well to have an understanding as to how other entities are dealing with these matters. Information Sharing Analysis Center. Again, these are nonprofit organizations, just like you, that gather and share information about cyber threats and other hazards. So, but we keep talking sharing. And perhaps persons sharing is going to be a two-way thing, but in some instances, it may be heavier on one side and down on the other. So lots of persons were gleaning for information in relation to the BRA breach, but in instances of national security, that information that you want may not necessarily come forward. But there still should be some kind of sharing based on what persons should know or could know. So even in the context of that, some sharing has to take place, or should take place rather. Steps to building a partnership framework, steps to there. Risk assessment is something that we talk about all the time. Every business should have in place their risk assessment for their particular service or business. So we need to conduct joint risk assessments. Define roles and responsibilities, develop secure communication protocols. We talked about protocols earlier. Launch joint training and simulation exercises. We saw in the video a lot of the companies talking about training, about sensitizing their workers, sensitizing their staff. So we know very well that all of our attacks may not necessarily originate from outside. Some could be insider as well. So we need to be mindful, we need to be able to educate our staff so that they do the right things, that they pay attention to their emails, that perhaps they do away with the curiosity to click. Curiosity to click may expose the network, may expose your data. So again, in doing all this, along the way, we want to establish KPIs so that we can keep track of the progress. And those are the steps for building the framework. Technology, role of technology. So we're going to use technology in cybersecurity to mitigate against threats, but that same technology that we're going to use will become vulnerable. So it's like going around the circle. So some of the technologies that play a crucial role, again, AI and machine learning, we understand that the AI perhaps is emulating human behavior, whereas the machine learning is automating those processes, those things that we do manually, those things that we do every day. Blockchain, again, for securing your data, and is about really decentralizing your networks, perhaps creating multiple nodes so that the databases, the data is not residing in one place or not necessarily under the management of control of one particular person or entity. And then cloud platforms. Who is doing business on the cloud? Everybody. Who is doing non-business on the cloud? Everybody. So everybody doing a little private thing on the cloud. Everybody got WhatsApp. Everybody got Instagram. Everybody got Facebook. So Facebook is not running from your computer at your desk. It's running from somewhere else. So again, we have to understand and perhaps examine these platforms and see that they can offer good tools to provide for delivery, performance, and optimization of our networks. So again, who wants the headache? Do you want the headache or want Google to have the headache?
When you said it like that.
Huh? Why so? Because that's the reality of it. So if it's on your computer, it's you to fix. If it's on somewhere else, computer, then it's for you to fix. Although if it comes to cost, I guess the US guys could give an indication when they ask the costs compare on premise, on cloud. So we will get there. Overcoming barriers to partnerships. Again, we talk about trust deficits. We got to build trust. We got to work together. We got to share. Some people argue that they trust persons 100% and then that trust deteriorates as things go. Some people don't trust it at all from start. So some people start at 100, some people start at 0. But trust is important regardless of wherever you start. Bridging resource gaps. Some companies, some entities have a lot of resources. Police perhaps is one of the biggest companies as far as resources is concerned in terms of bodies, and perhaps other bits and pieces. But again, all the resources do not reside there. So you need to bridge those gaps in resources between public and private entities. Standardizing communication protocols across industries. Again, that is particularly necessary because it can enhance your incident response. So we need to talk about standardizing that communication so that everybody uses common language to interpret what has happened. So going forward, steps to strengthen cybersecurity partnerships, long-term collaboration. When next will we talk? When next will we get in a forum like this? So we have to be grateful for the opportunities like these that are offered by other entities for us to talk, for us to share, for us to get to know one another, but we must commit to long-term collaboration. Engage stakeholders in dialogue and capacity building. We don't do that very well either. So there are lots of stakeholders in this cybersecurity fight. Everybody that has a computer, everybody that has a phone, perhaps can say that they are connected or should be involved in the cybersecurity fight. But we need to talk, we need to educate, and we need to share information. Invest in shared tools and resources for cybersecurity resilience. So some tools were shown at the other session. I have no doubt that they're being shown here as well. So we need to have a serious look and perhaps have that kind of engagement that can see us perhaps using these tools down the line. Future of cybersecurity and collaboration, unified efforts will create a safer digital world. That true? Yes. Together we can combat cyber threats and protect critical assets. So we have critical assets. So I'm not sure that it has been made public as yet, but we know that BRA has been doing some work in terms of trying to get some information in the public domain, both that and licensing authority. So if they have not had the press meeting as yet or the press briefing, then that is something that perhaps is going to come into the public domain. So we need to work together. A collaborative approach ensures resilience and innovation. We spoke to that. So at the end of my presentation, are there any comments, queries, questions?